The Cold War was not only fought in boardrooms and parliaments, it was fought in shadows, in the hands of operatives, analysts, and spies whose lives were invisible to the public eye. At the heart of this secret war was one of the most dangerous objects imaginable, the nuclear briefcase, a portable device that could trigger a country's entire nuclear arsenal. The year was 1968. Both the United States and the Soviet Union had developed fail-safe systems, allowing top leaders to order nuclear strikes from almost anywhere. The briefcases were called the football in the West, a compact, highly secured set of codes and communication devices designed to unleash unimaginable destruction. For intelligence agencies, the question wasn't whether these briefcases existed. The question was, could we get them? The KGB had been quietly observing a chain of CIA operations in Europe, learning every movement, every protocol. One mid-level Soviet agent, codenamed Mikhail Petrov, had been assigned to track a series of American nuclear exercises in West Germany. Petrov wasn't a field legend. He didn't carry weapons into enemy territory. He carried information, the most lethal weapon of all. Across the Atlantic, the CIA had its own agent, Robert Hawk Hawkins, stationed in Bonn. His orders were simple: observe, report, and if possible, infiltrate Soviet nuclear command exercises. To gather details on the USSR's equivalent of the football, it was an impossible job, fraught with danger, because the Soviets were watching every street, every train, and every line of communication. The first incident occurred on a rainy evening in East Berlin. A CIA operative posing as a journalist had been spotted near a military base, rumored to house a nuclear briefcase. Within hours, the KGB dispatched a rapid response team. Shadows moved like ghosts along the Berlin Wall. Every pedestrian, every car was potentially an operative or an informant. The city itself became a chessboard. Meanwhile, Petrov discovered discrepancies in the Soviet transport logs. A high-ranking officer had requested an unusual convoy route, one that bypassed standard checkpoints. Petrov reported this immediately to Moscow. The KGB suspected something was in motion, an American infiltration, or worse, a potential compromise of the nuclear briefcase. The tension was suffocating. Leaders on both sides had no idea how close the world was to a covert nuclear standoff that could ignite global catastrophe. Yet in hidden offices, rooms under embassy basements, and shadowed alleys, the race was already on. By the end of the week, both sides had mobilized their best operatives, and the first covert missions to track, intercept, and possibly secure the nuclear briefcases had begun. What happened next would not only test courage and loyalty but would reveal how fragile the balance of power truly was, and how a single mistake could have triggered an irreversible chain of events. The rain-soaked streets of Bonn were quiet, almost suspiciously so. At a small dimly lit cafe near the Rhine, Robert Hawk Hawkins sipped black coffee, scanning the area with practiced vigilance. To any casual observer, he was just another foreign journalist on assignment. But Hawk's eyes betrayed the truth. He was hunting the Soviet nuclear briefcase. A single slip, a misstep, and he could be captured, interrogated, or worse, executed. But he wasn't alone. Across town, his KGB counterpart, Mikhail Petrov, was observing the same streets through a network of informants and hidden cameras. For weeks, Petrov had pieced together intelligence from East German transport logs, shadowing officers, and subtle discrepancies in routine operations. Now, everything pointed to the same location. The briefcase was on the move. Hawk knew the American chain of command had authorized only observation. Any direct interference was forbidden, a rule he silently cursed. Yet, instinctively, he had memorized the convoy schedule of the Soviet officers, transporting the briefcase that very night. According to his notes, the convoy would depart a secure facility in Charlottenburg and take an unmarked route across the city to a secondary Soviet command post. The roads were lightly monitored, a rare window of opportunity. Meanwhile, Petrov had been ordered by Moscow to confirm the CIA's activity. He was not allowed to make direct contact, but indirect interception was encouraged. Petrov stationed his men along the supposed route. Each agent was positioned like a piece in a lethal game of chess. Shadows in doorways, corners and alleyways, all unseen, all watching. The night arrived, cloaked in fog. Hawk trailed the convoy at a distance, using his European car rental and a subtle blend of darkness and speed to remain undetected. His heartbeat matched the rhythm of the windshield wipers, and every passing street lamp created fleeting moments of exposure that could betray him. Petrov's team had eyes on the same convoy. From hidden positions, they observed every vehicle, noting subtle deviations. One officer, carrying a briefcase that matched the description of the nuclear football, sat in the second car. Petrov's breath caught. The briefcase was real, and it was moving under tight security. At a critical intersection, the convoy slowed due to traffic. Hawk saw his chance. The lead car of the convoy allowed him a line of sight to the officer with the briefcase. He discreetly photographed the briefcase with a small camera, capturing every angle. Every click of the shutter was like a drumbeat of danger. Simultaneously, Petrov's men noticed movement along the opposite sidewalk. A man with an unmistakable American gait, cameras, notes, radio devices, was trailing the convoy. Petrov made a silent signal. The observers converged to contain the potential breach, but no direct confrontation occurred. The delicate dance of espionage required patience. One wrong move could blow the operation for both sides. The convoy disappeared into a heavily guarded facility near the outskirts of Bonn. Hawk melted back into the shadows, blending into a line of pedestrians, heart still racing. Petrov's team followed discreetly, reporting back via coded radio signals. Both sides had achieved partial success. Hawk had photographic evidence, confirming the existence and movement of the nuclear briefcase. Petrov had confirmed the presence of a foreign operative, the CIA, in motion. Yet, neither side could predict the next move of the other, or the chain of events that would follow. A chain that would involve double crosses, near captures, and the constant threat of the world's deadliest weapon falling into the wrong hands. The race for the nuclear briefcase had truly begun, and with it, the most perilous missions of the Cold War were about to unfold. Days passed after the Bonn convoy incident, but the tension only grew. Both intelligence agencies had become aware that the other was operating close to the nuclear briefcase. For Hawk and Petrov, every street, every cafe, every passing car became a potential trap. The Cold War was no longer abstract. It was a game played in inches and seconds. Hawk received a coded message from Langley. The CIA had uncovered new intelligence. A second Soviet convoy would transport a backup nuclear briefcase through East Germany, heading toward a fortified military facility near Leipzig. This was the moment Hawk had trained for. Though the orders were clear, observe only, he arrived in Leipzig under the cover of a tourist. The train journey had given him time to memorize the route, study German maps, and review escape paths. Every glance from locals made him flinch. Each could be a KGB operative in disguise. The city felt tense, the air thick with suspicion. Meanwhile, Mikhail Petrov had received orders from Moscow to ensure the security of the briefcase at all costs. He stationed KGB operatives along every possible route, employing hidden checkpoints, disguised observers, and decoy vehicles. Petrov himself took a position in a shadowed alley, binoculars trained on the convoy's projected path. The convoy moved at dawn. 2 black vehicles, 1 unmarked van, and a lead officer carrying the briefcase. Hawk trailed discreetly, blending into early morning crowds and ducking into doorways whenever a patrol car passed. His heartbeat was steady but tense. Every step could be fatal. Suddenly, a minor deviation in the convoy's route created a rare opening. Hawk signaled to a small local contact, who quickly dropped a distraction, a staged delivery truck, blocking one of the streets. Hawk advanced toward the convoy, intending only to photograph the briefcase more closely. But Petrov's agents had already noticed unusual activity. From their vantage points, they saw a foreign operative moving too close to the convoy. One KGB officer slipped silently along the alley, keeping pace with Hawk while remaining unseen. Hawk captured several critical photographs and transmitted them via a concealed device back to Langley. The backup briefcase's security codes, its transport path, and vehicle types were all documented. Mission partially successful, but only for a fleeting moment. Suddenly, Hawk realized he was not alone. A shadow detached itself from a corner building, a KGB officer moving with lethal precision. Hawk froze, weighing his options. He could attempt a risky escape, but it might blow his cover completely. Instead, he melted back into the crowd, using the chaos created by the delivery truck. Petrov's agent pursued briefly, but Hawk vanished into a labyrinth of narrow streets. Petrov, frustrated, returned to his observation post. Hawk had escaped, but the mission confirmed 2 dangerous truths. The Americans were daring and precise, and the Soviets could not underestimate their opponents. By nightfall, Hawk had secured all intelligence required for the CIA, yet he knew the operation was far from over. Both sides understood that the nuclear briefcase wasn't just a weapon. It was leverage, power, and the ultimate prize in a covert war that had no room for error. Across Europe, operatives on both sides prepared for the next encounter, knowing that each failed interception, each slip of information, could bring the world closer to the brink. The race for the nuclear briefcase had entered a new, deadly phase, one in which only skill, luck, and nerves of steel could prevent catastrophe. The streets of Leipzig had grown eerily quiet by late evening, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Hawk moved cautiously through narrow alleys, the envelope of photographs tucked securely in his coat. Every shadow felt alive, every reflection a potential threat. He knew Petrov's men were still watching, still hunting. The Cold War was not just in the halls of power. It was here, on cobblestone streets, between two determined operatives. Hawk realized his escape route was about to close. From the shadows, Petrov's lead agent appeared, forcing him into a narrow alley. Hawk ducked, rolled, and used the wall to pivot. Adrenaline surged through every fiber of his body. Every training exercise, every protocol he had memorized, every instinct as a CIA operative was now being tested in real time. For a brief, tense moment, they faced each other across the alley. Hawk's eyes met Petrov's. No words were exchanged, only understanding. Each knew the other's skill, determination, and the stakes at hand. Then, in a sudden blur, Hawk vaulted a low fence and vanished into a secondary street, leaving Petrov frustrated but aware of Hawk's brilliance. By the end of the night, Hawk had survived, the photographs secured, and the Soviet briefcase safely delivered to its destination. But the encounter had changed the game. Both sides understood the danger now was not hypothetical. The intelligence war had become personal. Every alley, every shadow, every moment could be a trap. The race for the nuclear briefcase was no longer just about information. It was a high-stakes game where one misstep could trigger a global catastrophe. And both Hawk and Petrov were now players fully aware of the deadly consequences. The next missions would push them further, closer to danger, closer to confrontation, and closer to the edge of a nuclear nightmare. The city of Leipzig lay silent, under a thin blanket of fog as Hawk navigated the labyrinth of streets. Every turn, every shadow, every distant footstep reminded him of the stakes. The photographs he carried were more than intelligence. They were proof that the most dangerous object on Earth, the nuclear briefcase, could be tracked, perhaps even compromised. Meanwhile, Petrov coordinated his final surveillance efforts. Moscow had demanded results. The CIA operative had been spotted multiple times, and each encounter was a test of skill, patience, and nerve. The KGB could not afford a failure, nor could the Americans underestimate the Soviets' resolve. Hawk reached the extraction point, a safe house tucked in the suburbs, just as the early morning tram rattled past. Inside, a single CIA operative waited, monitoring the radio for any signs of Soviet pursuit. Hawk handed over the photographs and notes, detailed convoy schedules, security protocols, personnel codes. The data could give the United States a temporary advantage, but it also represented the razor's edge on which the world balanced. Petrov, observing from a concealed location, knew that his adversary had succeeded in capturing the intelligence. Yet he also knew that the briefcase itself remained secure. The Soviets still retained control over their nuclear arsenal. The delicate balance of terror, mutually assured destruction, had not shifted, but both sides had seen how fragile it was. In the following days, both agencies assessed the results. Hawk's photographs confirmed vulnerabilities, but no direct theft had occurred. Petrov reported the incidents to Moscow, highlighting the CIA's audacity and skill. Both sides silently acknowledged the unspoken truth. The nuclear briefcase was not just a tool of war. It was the ultimate chess piece, and every move could provoke catastrophic consequences. For Hawk, the mission ended without capture, but the tension lingered. He had glimpsed the unimaginable, how close the world had come to destabilization over intelligence and espionage. The thrill of the chase was overshadowed by the weight of responsibility. One mistake, one exposure, and the consequences would be global, irreversible. For Petrov, the mission was a success in protecting the briefcase. Yet he could not shake a creeping respect for Hawk. The Americans had come, perilously close to undermining Soviet security, and in that proximity lay a quiet acknowledgement. The Cold War was not only fought with weapons and treaties, but with courage, calculation, and sheer nerve. Weeks later, the nuclear briefcase remained where it belonged, under layers of security and secrecy. The CIA had the intelligence they needed. The KGB had maintained control. And yet the invisible race had left both sides changed, more cautious, more aware, and acutely aware of the fragility of the world order. The race had been won by neither side, and yet both had proven something crucial: that the Cold War was a silent battlefield, fought not with open combat, but with shadows, secrets, and fleeting moments where history could be altered by a single envelope, a single photograph, or a single choice. And somewhere in the foggy streets of Leipzig, two men, adversaries in duty, mirrors of skill, carried with them the unspoken truth. The world had been on the brink, and the balance of power rested not on treaties or armies, but on courage, precision, and the silent guardians of a global secret. History moved forward. The nuclear briefcase remained a ghostly symbol of ultimate power, watched, protected, and chased by those who understood its terrifying significance. The race was over for now, but the lesson lingered. In the Cold War, the line between survival and catastrophe was thinner than the envelope that carried the world's most dangerous secrets.